So, hello everyone. My name is Nick Dahlman, and I'm the product marketing manager here at Exactly. I first want to welcome you and thank you for all the time out of your day to join our event. Everyone's tightening their seatbelt a little bit more snug this time of year as we approach critical points in the fiscal and calendar years. So, we're very appreciative of your time. Before we get started, I want to quickly run through a couple housekeeping items. On the right-hand side of your screen, you'll notice a couple of items. There's a group chat available, as well as our Q&A submission. So if at any point during the presentation you have a question, please feel free to pop it into the Q&A, and we'll take your questions at the end. Additionally, this event will be recorded, and we'll be sharing the recording after the presentation today. So I mentioned tightening your belts at the beginning, and I think many of us have had to do that in really the past 2.5 years. We're going to touch on a topic that's top of mind for a lot of businesses and revenue leaders at the moment, and that's how to navigate the challenges we've been experiencing over the past couple of years and um, really even the past few months. Obviously, we've dealt with the pandemic, we're experiencing inflation, and a looming or even current recession. There have been supply chain issues as well, and mass resignations and job switching within the global workforce. In response to these challenges, we see organizations starting to shift goals of driving top line revenue growth to now protecting the bottom line and preparing for these potential headwinds. The challenge we're seeing within executive teams is that the models with which they run their businesses aren't optimal, they aren't sustainable in these conditions, and they may just not work anymore. So today, specifically, we're going to dig into how forward-looking revenue teams are using actionable data and insights within their forecasting solution to evaluate and improve the health of the revenue organization. We've been able to see how these organizations have used the right tools and proactive approaches and guided strategies to drive profitability. And then we'll dive into what that actually looks like by walking you through what a day in the life looks like for these teams and some of the best practices that are being utilized. We'll have time for Q&A at the end, as well as doing a random drawing to announce the winner of a Google Nest Hub. So with that, I want to introduce my guest today, Stephanie Schall. She's the Global Exactly Forecasting Solutions Strategist, and Taylor Wilding, the RVP of Americas West and North America Growth. So without further ado, let's dive right in and get started. Before we begin, we have a poll question for you within the poll tab on the right-hand side of your screen. The question is, how do you manage and visualize your forecasting solution today? At any point, feel free to log your answers during this conversation. And so Taylor and Steph, I have a question for both of you. So let's start with that. Based on some of your recent conversations with industry experts, customers, or even conversations with our teams internally, as we're shifting from a great resignation to hiring freezes and economic uncertainty, what are some of the things you're hearing, and how do you think that impacts the sales/revenue teams within organizations? And I guess, Taylor, we can start with you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Nick. I think it really comes down to getting the most out of the people that you do have. So how do you motivate them? How do you keep them engaged? How do you keep them, of course, making money? We know that, money's not everything, but it is indeed a driving force. So how do you make that present as well and dangle that proverbial carrot in front of them at the same time as they're, managing their business as tightly as possible? And when I mean as tightly as possible, I mean, keeping everything in tip-top shape. Of course, everyone has always talked about CRM hygiene and things like that. So how do you actually do that without just saying it? You actually have to put something in place and make sure that you're managing, having them manage up as well. So it's really about giving people the opportunity, the voice, and also the ability just to manage their business in a more data-driven fashion.
Yeah, and I just add to that, being able to make sure that they're focused on the right deals at the right time. A lot of times we've got reps that have happy ears, so making sure that they can understand that it's a healthy deal, what needs to happen next to move the deal forward, helping management and leadership to really understand, where the risks are, where's the red flags that are being waved, so that they can understand how to coach their reps to really make sure that deals are moving forward, because every opportunity in a time like this is so crucial, so important. We want to make sure that reps are focused on the right deals that have the highest potential to close.
Taylor, anything else to add to that?
No, I mean, I think it's just, there's so many different things or noise that you have to deal with today. So it's about really remaining focused on things, and then giving those little nudges along the way in order to, impart best practices and get sellers to be thinking about things that, might not necessarily be front of mind. So how do you get things in front of them, and how do you really push them to make the right moves and think about, not just the next thing that's ahead, but things that are around the corner that they can't necessarily see yet.
Right. So I think we can shift to showing how we can be more proactive in our approaches and how we can use that data to ensure that the right opportunities are being worked at the right time. So I'm curious to hear about, a day in the life of a salesperson when it comes to reviewing pipeline and what features of forecasting are used to accomplish that. Are there any specific views and dashboards that you utilize, and how do you utilize forecasting to help with, tracking commission expenses and exposure? So I think we can dive into a demo to better understand that.
Yeah, let's do it. I mean, as Stephanie's bringing that up, I as a sales leader, right, as you mentioned, I'm RVP of sales here in the West. So I have a couple of different teams, North American growth team. I have a commercial West team, a commercial Central team, and then an enterprise West team as well. And to be honest with you, I just cannot imagine doing my job efficiently as I think I do, at least, without a solution like this. I truthfully, I mean, I see that, in the poll, we've got 8 folks that are using spreadsheets today. 2 are using, CRM, another using another platform of sorts. So it's just, to me, I'm not sure how people are able to manage or do the things that I do within this solution without a solution like this. So looking forward to jumping in here. The first thing we're actually looking at here is how I start my day, to be quite frank, is the waterfall report. So coming in and be able to see the movement in my pipeline within a given period or whatever period I really choose is extremely important. So Steph, if you don't mind just kind of walking us through what it is we're looking at here, and then I can talk to, what it is that I'm looking at here as well on a daily and hourly basis, to be quite frank.
Yeah, absolutely. So with the waterfall, what this is allowing you to do is to grab hold of the opportunities that you want to keep track of. So we're looking at all of the deals within the fiscal quarter, and then being able to see what has happened since that starting point. So since the quarters began, what's happened in the last week or in the current week. So you can keep your finger on the pulse of those changes. And then we can bring in and out any of the stages. So let's say you're like, I only want to look at, the last so many opportunity stages that mean the most to our organization as we get closer to the end of the quarter. So we're able to look at, here's where we started. We're able to see what is that activity that got us from the start to the end point. What's new, what's pulled in, what's changed in the amounts? Have they increased, decreased? Have opportunities pushed out? And then what do we win and lose to get us to where we are today? So this gives Taylor that 50,000 foot view to really quickly keep his finger on the pulse of what's changed since the last time that he logged in.
Yeah. And I mean, one of the biggest points is that, going back to kind of we'll call it the analog version of this, right? Is you see that maybe your pipeline has decreased, but being able to understand where you lost some of that pipeline is something that, with the analog version is really hard. I think about it as almost like the club, right? When you think about the club that you use to protect your car or used to use to protect your car, and some of you still might, it gives really that indication that, hey, this car's protected, it's safe, and anybody can't just drive it. But now we've got things like Tesla and Sentry Mode, where there's alerts and there's different things, camera views and the like there that you can see to protect the car and then have those data-driven insights. It's kind of the same thing. We're essentially looking at the Sentry Mode of car, of forecasting or revenue intelligence. So There's a lot of great things that we can see here. And I think there's also a more granulated view that I look at on a daily basis that helps me understand where those deals went and also look ahead to what's progressing and regressing as well.
Yeah, I love the club story because you think about, when you're in spreadsheets to be able to get this information, this is going to sales ops. Sales ops is having to put several different reports together, pull different spreadsheets to be able to gather all this information. So by the time you get it in your hands, it is static and it's late and it's not connected to a constantly moving pipeline. So to be able to understand not only that picture in time of what happened and when and where, but knowing that if something changes an hour from now, I've got my finger on the pulse of what that change is and I can get to it, especially when it's a deal that's been pushed out, is super important.
Absolutely. And to your point, right, this information that we're looking at, it all is coming out of the CRM essentially. And so as we can see here, I log into, Salesforce, and it's iframed within Salesforce. So I don't have to go anywhere. Same thing for my sellers, my directors, everybody's just able to access it right then and there. So it just helps people, meet the sellers where they are and make it super convenient for them to adopt it and then glean the insights from it, which we'll talk about here in a little bit.
Very good. All right. So then after this, then you really dig into the forecast and look at what's happened and what your team's calling.
Yeah. So of course, understanding where we're at in respect to quota, and then looking at, on a month by month basis, right? Looking at the linearity of the business as everybody's focused on having that linearity and eliminating that hockey stick. So in my opinion, in my experience as well, the only way to do that is to bring it front and center, right? If you don't measure it, if you don't present it, then there's nothing to really gauge yourself off of. So it's extremely important. So as we're looking at this here, right, just kind of moving from left to right and on the top, quota and then the commit forecast is what we're looking at here. And then the big thing, of course, is what's your gap, right? Understanding the gap to those numbers gives you, once again, kind of that proverbial carrot or that metric that you're striving for in order to understand. And how are you going to make up that gap is probably the most important aspect of it.
Yeah. And being able to keep track of that gap in different places. So looking at the quota and close one, so I can see, how much we've won, what do we need to fill? What do we need to make up for the full gap? But then understanding, all right, here's everything that my team has committed to the forecast. Where's the gap to that? Based on what they're committing, is there opportunities that we need to find, that we need to be aware of? We need to understand, how are we going to make up what's committed, and then understanding, are all these opportunities that are in the commit, are they good? Yeah.
Right. And so from here, right, when you dive into this view, then you're able to easily sort by, on the health score. So if I want to look at those deals that have, lower health scores, essentially, these are the deals that I'm looking at that have those leading indicators to say that these are probably not healthy deals, of course, by name, but most likely these are the deals that are likely, have the highest likelihood to push or us to lose. And so that way we're able to put some coaching parameters around it, or at the end of the day, get it out of the pipeline as a whole if it's not a healthy deal. So with the health score, like you just brought up, right, being able to see those attributes, that's talking about those data-driven insights, right? So talking about momentum, talking about ideal customer profile, talking about things like the stage progression and what have you. Those are things that you can then look at. And as an individual contributor, for instance, if you're looking at that and you say, okay, in my gut, I'm saying, this is a 99% to close deal. I've got this in the bag. I'm good to go. And then you're looking at this and there's a 29% health score. It gives you some of that corrective action in order to say, hey, what am I missing here based on how we typically sell? Is the ideal customer profile, are they not a fit? Am I not getting any responses? The momentum's bad. And then, of course, we're reading sentiment analysis from email and things along those lines as well. So if there's a lot of competition talked about within the email, or you just see a lot of negative words, that's all configurable for your instance based on what your business is. And then for us, we're able to see then from a sales leadership perspective and individual contributor perspective as to, what kind of corrective actions we need to put towards that, which we'll talk to here in a little bit. But at least this gives you an indication as to, this deal might not quite be as healthy as that intuition bias is telling you. And then it gives you the ability to kind of double check yourself and put some different course corrections in place.
Yeah, that's great.
On this screen as well, one of the things that, as a sales leadership team, it makes sense is that you've got reps that, either have happy ears or of course they're seeing the dollars and cents, right? Which is always great. And of course, as our flagship solution here at Exactly is an incentive compensation management solution. We see the value in bringing the two things together. But really what we're looking at here and where I'm coming from is the ability to make an adjustment. So if you know of an opportunity, that this might be an existing customer that doesn't typically spend money, so we hedge that down. Whatever the situation may be, you can make those adjustments, and then that way you're able to call a clear number or more accurate number based on what you see as the adjustment necessary for an opportunity.
Yeah, planning ahead for those where you think you might discount at the end, or where, okay, I think we may just get a portion of their business right now to get this started. Start out with a pilot group or something like that. Definitely being able to roll that up then to your VP is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the commit forecast piece. The other, of course, is just looking at the monthly linearity. And then there's, the ability to dive into those on a calculator and see what they all make up. So right next to the month, being able to dive into the calculator and once again, do the same thing, understand what's making up that dollar amount within that particular month is extremely insightful information as well.
Very good. Okay. Then how, in terms of understanding coverage and pipeline and making sure that your team has good pipeline, how do you measure that within this view?
Yeah. So, I think a lot of organizations are thinking 3X pipeline, especially to Nick's point at the beginning of this, right? And the way that economic times are going, 3X pipeline probably isn't sufficient in a lot of cases, right? So looking at the conversion rates is extremely important to understand what the pipeline coverage needed is. But on the right-hand side, being able to see the actual pipeline coverage that you have, and then the comparison to weighted pipeline, which can be identified by your organization by stage progression or whatever it may be, being able to see what that looks like. And so that way you can see what the actual chances of you hitting your numbers are as well. So, if you have a sales director, for instance, that's calling a particular number and they don't even have 1X coverage, that means they're looking to bat 1,000. So the reality of calling that number is not all that great. So we have to come back and dial that back as well. But then, of course, the AI projection, I think, is one of the most powerful, assets that we have at our fingertips here within the application, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah. And it's really, we talked about the intuition bias, the happy ears. It's really just pressing up against that and allowing you to have that. Here's what my team is calling. Here's what I'm calling. And then based upon historical data, based upon the deals that are in the pipeline today, based on those statistics and the cycle times and win rates and activity and all of that going into this, to be able to say, well, here's what the AI is saying. So definitely that triangulation of the data is so important.
Right. And we're looking at this from a sales leader's perspective. The nice part is, as well, as individual contributors can also look at it. And then, of course, as a sales leader, you can drill into those individual contributors as well. So one of the things that I've done as that corrective action or that ability to influence and coach is to say, hey, right now, for instance, you're calling $346,000 or whatever that number may be, but AI projections calling $500K. And a lot of that has to do with, what it's reading into is pipeline that has not yet been generated and is to be won within that period based on historicals, right? Last 3 to 4 periods. Typically with 40 days left within a period, you go out and you find X amount of dollars worth of ARR historically and close that business. That's not in the pipeline today. So how do you anticipate that? That's something that this AI projection is bringing into play as well. And then be able to see, of course, visually what the climb looks like or the decline of that AI projection as well.
Yeah. And then being able to see that across your team. So you can see how they're tracking, being able to see, collaborating with the forecast to understand as they call out their number and they're committing their number, being able to engage with that so they can say, well, here's why this went down, so that you have that engagement and be able for Taylor to understand, hey, here's what my directors are feeding up to me. Is always gives good insights as well.
Yep. The other thing too, and I'd be curious to see in the questions, of course, is people that don't have an application like this. How do you see pipeline that's not yet in your pipeline, right? How do you see opportunities or understand what the potential is there if it's not yet visible to you? If those opportunities don't live within your CRM or otherwise, do they really exist? And with an application like Exactly Forecasting, they do. It's just not in the traditional sense, but you at least see the representation of the revenue through the AI projection.
Absolutely. Yep. So, you've got the sandbagging reps that are going to, wait to open up an opportunity until they know that it's a good opportunity, which gives you no insights into planning, into understanding what has the potential to close. So to be able to have that ahead of time to know, hey, historically, here's how much pipeline comes in from this rep. Here's when they tend to bring that in, just gives you the visibility of the entire picture along the way.
Yeah. And then of course, you want to look at it almost as, I think of it as a brick wall, right? The forecast itself, the quota, the number is a brick wall, but in order to build that brick wall, you need individual bricks in order to build it. And so that's essentially what we're looking at here is each individual bricks that make up that forecast. And so this is the pipeline. And so being able to see where they are in a Kanban type style to be able to visualize very easily is something that, I value. We use a lot of here internally and just the ability to see it in different views as well. One of the things, of course, from the views perspective that I really appreciate is I have the ability to create my own views. So as an organization, we put views forward, but let's say, for instance, I want to look at deals that have pushed 2 or more times and have a deal health score of under 50%. I can go in and I can create that view myself instead of having to go back to professional services or anyone else and be able to visualize that information as I see fit in order to do, that's how I identify sometimes deal reviews, right? Let's look at these deals. Why are they in our pipeline? Because those, if they have a history of pushing, will most likely push again.
Absolutely. So then you can come in here and it's already sliced and diced up the way you want to see it. So you can go through and do your automated inspection of, hey, here's how I want to pull up the pipeline. Here's how I want to engage with it so that you've got your method, your track and workflow that you go through, and then being able to see all of that in real time to be able to understand what's happening and be able to dig into the opportunity to understand what's going on with the deals as well.
Yeah. And then of course, as I mentioned before, our flagship product being on the incentive compensation management, the ability to visualize based on what's in the system, what the commission's potential is on these deals is obviously a differentiator for us and really drives that behavior as well. But really, as you're showing here, being able to capture momentum of deals and see what specifically is happening, be able to drive in and see what the customers are saying via the emails, chorus recordings, being able to click into the chorus recording itself and see right within the UI what's going on there, not have to go to 2 different places. All this information at your fingertips in one place, it really just bubbles up what's already in the CRM in a quote unquote bowl of spaghetti and bringing it really up into one nice clean sushi roll, if you will. 2 different cuisines, but nice and clean is what I'm trying to get at.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you're motivating the rep, you're driving them to the right actions, helping to understand where you need to coach, and just having that visibility of the warnings and really understanding how to help your reps be more successful, which is success for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very good. All right. Oh, Nick, it looks like you're muted.
You're back.
You're back.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yep, gotcha.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. Yeah, we have a few minutes for Q&A, and I want to get to those questions. It's been a really great conversation, and you've both provided really great insight on how to approach the current state of things. And one of the questions that I've received is, why has it been so difficult to project commission expenses in the past?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can take that one, and then Stephanie, you can you can go and elaborate on it. But really, it's the lack of digital overlap. There hasn't been a solution out there that marries the two things together. And the difference there is not only, on the sales rep side and driving that behavior, they giving them the visibility into what the commissions are on a particular opportunity, but also behind the scenes finance then gets that aggregate view. And they're not just looking at it from a deal as a deal as a deal as a deal. They're able to look at it based on, the health score of a deal, the metrics associated with that particular rep, and where they're at from a quota attainment perspective, of course, hitting accelerators or not, but also, what's the likelihood of closing based on the historical trends of that rep, right? Are they a top performer and they're always closing the deals that they have committed? That's the insight that we're able to glean within the solution because of that digital overlap between Xactly forecasting and Xactly Incent to bring them all together in one platform.
Perfect. Thank you.
And I would just add to that it's too, that normally it's that constantly moving pipeline and it's such a manual process. Like the comp team is at the mercy of what's in the CRM. And most of the time what's in the CRM is not everything that's in the rep's head. It's not connecting activity. You're not getting the full picture of the true health of the opportunity. And it takes them days to be able to put all of that together, chase down all the information. So it's a process each time they run that prediction versus having it at their fingertips as the pipeline is constantly changing.
Yep. All right. So we have one more question here, and thanks for answering that first one. Is Xactly Forecasting able to handle recurring revenue forecasting?
Yes. Great question. So the power of our data studio, it allows us to bring data in from any source. So depending on how you're looking at your recurring revenue, if that's based on invoices, if it's actuals, we're bringing that in and marrying that together with the account so that you can track that activity against your account forecast, against your opportunities, but to be able to see what has been projected, what's coming in, and then guiding the rep to that account if maybe what was predicted has gone down, adoption has gone down, usage has gone down, the invoices have slowed down. In this time, we need to get there and provide the education. So we need to drive that action as well. So yes.
Stephanie, a lot of that has to do with being able to connect to other systems outside of just the CRM, yes. Right? Because most times that data lives outside of the CRM for a lot of our customers. So
most of the time it's in the ERP or it's in separate spreadsheets, and it's reps. You're supposed to go in all these disparate systems. We know reps don't like doing that. They don't. So then when they do forecast or they do try to put their finger on the pulse of what's happening, they're just gauging. They're not bringing all of that critical data together and tracking against that. So being able to have everything that's necessary to make those decisions in one place is crucial. And that's where,
even if they could, the ability to actually decipher and action that information is a whole other story. And of course, within forecasting, you can see that there's the ability to not just visualize the data, but then action that data as well in a clean UI that makes a whole lot of sense.
Yes.
Actually, I had one more pop through, and if you could answer it in about 30 seconds. The question is, can you double click on the AI prediction functionality?
Yeah. So what we do is we don't necessarily double click on it. What we do is we can set it up in different ways. So some of our customers like it to be set up in the total AI prediction number. Others want to see it broken out, and they want to see, I want to understand what is the AI prediction based upon what's in the pipeline today and likely to close, and then be able to have it separated out for what's the prediction of what is expected to close, but has not yet been created. So you can delineate across what still is to come so that you can really understand that full picture even more.
Okay,
so
great.
we can surface the information the way that you want to be able to visualize that.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you both for your insights today. It was very helpful, and I'm sure helpful to the audience as well. I want to thank you all for attending. And I mentioned that we have a Google Nest Hub to give away. And Beth Robertson, you're the lucky winner. So congratulations, and we'll be in touch with you on how to claim that. After we wrap things up here, we'll be sending out the recording of this event so that you can reference and share with your teams. If you have any additional questions, please reach out to our team at connect@xactlycore.com or reach out to your Xactly rep for more information. that's all. And thanks again, everyone. And I hope you have a great rest of the day. Thank you very much.